kind of go more in depth with you about how everything came to be, because you obviously I've discussed before that you reached out to Patrick, and then Patrick had told me you should check out. I mean, this guy wants to know if you'd be interested in checking out his movies, speak with him, so on and so forth. I said, yeah, sure, I'll look into it. So by chance, when Patrick had reached out to me and had asked me about looking into your films, one of the first things I saw was Buckskin. I think I saw one of the posters in that email that he sent out, and I was like, holy shit, I was going to buy that movie because I was at Walmart, and so I bought Whitetail, which Zimbra was in.
Yeah,
Bought that film, and then when I bought Whitetail, I saw Buckskin, and I saw him in the cover. I was like, I'm gonna check out that movie. And then after I got the email from Patrick about that, and I went back to Walmart, bought the film, saw it, and then I've already shared my thoughts in there of what my first reaction was. Then after that, I said before, Copper Bill. Copper Bill to me was that first impression that I got off of you, where I was like, the first thing I noticed right away is that you're a really good director. So that's the first thing I noticed here. I also noticed here too that the story that you were taking with Hallam's character, I think it was Jessup, right?
Yeah.
I love that character story. Yeah. And so, and I kind of shared my thoughts on that in the previous conversations we had. So anyways, so going back to that, I decided to go check out 90 Feet from Home, which is the film that, in my opinion, I think a lot of people who watch your films will agree that is your absolute best film that you've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for a number of different reasons. And here's the thing, I'm going to quote something that you said in one interview that I absolutely did love. And that for me, I there's a dichotomy about that title of the film that you had brought up before about that has kind of like a double meaning for some people. But for me, I kind of got a perspective on your perception on it and what the film is actually about. So I'm going to read the quote to you, and I want to get your perspective on it now since the film has been out. So this is what you said. You said, growing up, I played baseball. My father would always come to the games. And there was one instance where, every kid that plays baseball in America has this dream of coming up on the bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, and it's your time to be a hero. So that actually happened to me. And my father ran down from the grandstands and got my attention and just told me, he goes, you hit the ball of the winning run. It's 90 feet from home. And so that always stuck with me, especially now that my father is no longer living.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the movie where it's a character who has a really tumultuous relationship with his father, who they're actually not in good terms. For you, on the other hand, that title coming from a relationship that I would imagine you have with your father, which is a very good relationship, that to me was actually the turning point where I started realizing, so you use the title for a positive thing. The film, on the other hand, not so much up until the very end, depending on who you want to ask about how they feel about the movie.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of layers to that film that I really did gravitate to, that I took a lot from. Till this day, as I said before, it is still my favorite film you've done.
Yeah.
And I do think it's your absolute best as well, too. But now that people have already seen it, it's been out we're in 2022. It's came out in 2019 for 3 years now.
Yeah.
Has any perception about how you see the film now from what it was when you first started shooting it to where you are with it now?
Yeah, I think the title was always something I wanted to use. We just never had to, it didn't have to be a baseball movie. I think one of the biggest things that I get on the negative side is people will rent it or watch it and be like, there's no baseball in it. And I'm like, well, there is, but that's, not really what the movie's about. And I think that's a larger problem as far as viewers, there's so much content out there now that whatever they see on the poster, they're just expecting that needs to be in the movie. And so, it stems from, Disney and Marvel. When they put Doctor Strange on a poster, what it's about, so, but for me, I think when the movie came out, we knew it was going to be special from the moment we heard the story.
Right.
We knew that it was going to affect people, which it has. We've got tons of emails from people saying like, this movie made me call my father again. It brought up these, good, bad memories. The one that stuck with me the most was there was a guy that wrote us and said that he was physically and verbally abused by his father, and the mother did nothing, which is very similar to the story that we have. And the father lost his larynx or something like that, and the ability to speak. And by the time that his father had, found God and come around to this, cleansing of himself and becoming this new person, he couldn't even speak verbally to apologize. And that's what hurt this individual the most, is like, I know he's sorry, but he can't say it, And that was the one that like I was like, whoa, this movie took on a whole different meaning. Because yes, it had that backbone to it, but we never expected the stories like that, the YouTube comments about, you know, this happened to me. I mean, it opened my eyes to just a whole generation of abused people that I just never knew. I guess I knew existed, but I have a very, you know, blessed life. So I don't, and there's no abuse in this household. So it was something that I knew existed, but I never thought existed on this level. So I think the movie became, like we always knew it was going to be great, you know, but I think it became something different. I think it became our only movie probably to this point, which goes towards what you're saying, that really has, well, not the only, but the most specific one that's people can say, I can relate most to that. You know, even people that we know as close personal friends have come to us, or at least to me, and been like, you know, that's what happened to me. And I'm like, really? You know, and it took this movie to get them to even open up about it, you know? So, you know, but on the flip side of that, there's just a ton of hate towards it too, you know, like there are a lot of people who are like, you don't need to show that on camera and use that language. And so it's just interesting how people, and I would dare say, I would bet that a lot of the people that don't like the movie are victims of that same abuse, that don't want those feelings coming out. You know, I guess today you could say it's a trigger, you know, which, you know, is just, that can happen to anyone at any time. So I don't take it too personal, you know, but I think it's always stuck with it. And I think the last scene of that movie with Sean and Tom Hallam is probably my favorite movie moment we as a team have ever accomplished. The music, because we always knew we wanted the Whiskey Myers song in there. You know, Sean's performance when he's sitting on the chair, he doesn't even need to speak. It is to me one of the saddest moments in movie history. I mean, it's just, I'd tear up watching it every time because it's just sadder than anything you can imagine. You know, if you try to put yourself in those shoes. So it definitely is probably our favorite as well. But we had more resources and more time to really make that movie, which, you know, will happen again. And I think that I finally do have the next 90 Feet from Home, if that makes sense. The script that we can produce with a larger budget and a larger cast that I think can affect people that way, you know.
Well, you know, the one thing about that film that, you know, because you talked about the ending, it always gets to me too. Honestly, I understand what I'm saying this here. I really do mean this with the utmost sincerity, but I mean in a good way too. I can't watch that film too often because, you know, it's like I mean, there's so many great things about the film that I take away from. There's very few negatives that I have with the film. But the biggest thing that I always struggle with is just getting to that part of the end, as you mentioned before, where, you know, where everything unfolds the way that it does. You know, and even now, as I'm actually getting a little teary thinking, because when I think about that, no, I'm being serious. When I think about that, you know, there's a lot of personal things that I relate to as well too, and with the film. But it's, you know, I always love father-son relationship stories, whether it's, you know, a rough one, a good one. You know, if there's something I can take away from, I gravitate to that story. But that's actually one of the very few films that deals with a subject matter like that, where if I go back to watch it, I literally have to be mentally prepared to deal with the emotional you know, journey that will come with that. And I've seen the movie, and I can count this to this very day only 4 times. In those 4 times, it was literally weeks apart for me to watch it, because I can't go back and watch it like I would with, say, for example, like the Rodeo Thief, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But that, you know, that film, you know, made a really good impact on me. And I remember when I first saw, I was like, holy shit, this guy's got something amazing to share with everybody, because it left a really good impression. For those people that feel like that, you know, they have this tendency to say, you know, that you shouldn't have done this and that. I'm always of the mindset that if you're not doing it, then you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't understand what's going on when it comes to making the film. You know, I'm going to say the only way I can say it best here is fuck it. You don't know what's going on. So
exactly. Yeah.
That being said, though, I understand the perspective, but you know, when I watch the film, there's a lot that I do connect with here on more than different on various levels there. But the most important thing is the father and son relationship aspect of it, because there's 2 children that are affected differently, and they both handle it separately, and they do it
Mhm.
differently as well too. So you get those layers as well too. It's not just one single focus,
Yeah.
even though Adam's character is the focus, but you do get different perspective on how they handle that. And then you get the father perspective too, from where he started to where he's at the end. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but that movie to me, I always felt like was something that showed, in my opinion, all the strengths that you were able to accomplish that in many of the other films you've done since then, but was all encompassed in that one movie. So yes, I do hope that we get an opportunity for you where we get to see another film of that sort, where you do have more time, resources, and just whatever else that is going to be necessary to help with that next film you want to do.
Yeah.
So with that said, on 90 Feet from Home, the first film that I saw from you was Copper Bill. So I'm going to try to be very careful how I can work around this here because, I want to be saying this here. When I first saw the movie, the first thing I got off right at the bat with the film was that you're a fantastic director. The build up to that suspension for the story, the characters that we get, Tom Hallam and uh, Dustin. Thank you. I was going to say Dusty. So getting the introduction of those two characters there, I love that build up to that. What I do remember you mentioned before, that this is a film that I believe you guys had financed yourself, that you wanted to self-produce, make on your terms, and it shows. That being said, though, this is also your second longest production as well, too, after 90 Feet from Home, because I think 90 Feet from Home was 3 weeks and some change.
Yeah, about 3 weeks.
Yeah, so this one's about more or less just under around the same time frame, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was I think a week. I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
So, I can clearly see you guys had a lot of anticipation for this film, and I could see that. So the only issue that I had with the film really was with the ending, but we won't have to get into that here. But that being said, though, there was a lot of potential that I saw that I got from that movie, that when I saw that and then I saw 90 Feet from Home, I got it right away.
Yeah.
So with this film, though, on the other hand, there was a lot that I felt like that was, you're trying a different genre, if you will. And I think Tom Hallam kind of said it best, where it's kind of like a little bit of that canon film-esque kind of vibe to it, which it kind of did have in this movie when I noticed it. He said it the first time. So having seen that film, and I've seen the movie, believe it or not, 5 times. And each time I actually do enjoy the film.
Yeah.
Till the ending, of course. That being said, I'm curious about how you feel about it now, first time up to this point.
And Copper Bill was not my idea.
Okay.
My wife, our producer for B22, she has always been enamored with this Texas mafia Cobble Ranch story, which, for those that don't know, Cobble Ranch is 35 north going to Oklahoma. It's still there. It's just the shell at this point, but it was a huge ranch where Cutter Bill, this world famous cutting horse, lived, and it became a famed location because the owner ran what was called, I think, the Cowboy Mafia, which encompassed the Marlboro Man, the actual actor, and they were, muling drugs from Colombia out of that ranch in horses, and so that's kind of the folklore of this, true story. So at the time, we wanted to do Cutter Bill, and we were quickly told by the family that we would be sued instantly because they probably don't want that rehashed, even though it's been told. So we changed the story a little bit, and we dance around that, but we don't actually ever go into it in too much story, so that so we don't get sued, but because they just weren't willing to work with us. But Copper Bill was self-financed. We believed in Dustin and Tom and Billy and Tom Zembrod, and we were like, okay, we can do this. Katie Harris was fantastic. Arthur Red Cloud, played the Indian in the film, and that's his title, the Indian. And so we just had a lot of Sanine, who runs Circle N Farms, that location, that filming location. That was the first time that she really took a more active role too. And so we had really good producers on it, and we were cranking, but we did have issues with, it was like 120 degrees in that barn, and it was August, and I'm like, what are we doing? And then we did have to rewrite the ending on the fly. And so the ending really suffered. So looking back at that film, I think that was when we finally realized three things: that Billy Blair and Tom Hallam are cinematic gold together.
Yes.
Dustin Rhodes is severely underestimated as an actor.
Yes.
He nailed a 6-minute monologue on the first take
Yep.
without stuttering. And then the last thing we realized is that we love the movie until the last 8 to 10 minutes. And so even to this day, I'll watch it until the last 8 to 10 minutes and then turn it off. You know, we've kicked around sequel ideas, prequel ideas. It's never really come to fruition. So I think the Copper Bill story may be dead for now. But we have done other things that have teased that they're connected to Copper Bill. So we did have at one point a script where Dustin had a twin brother, and we could bring Dustin back, and he goes looking for revenge for the only people that are still alive after Copper Bill. But we felt like we were forcing it. Like, we're forcing a sequel when you don't really need it, to be honest with you. I really think a prequel would be better if we could expand the world and bring the ranch story into it, which would take a huge budget to recreate, you know, that time period. I mean, 70s, it would be extremely expensive to film for obvious reasons. So yeah, we love Copper Bill. We feel you, man, that the end really kind of sunk the movie like a stone. But then we have heard from other people that Tom Zembrot did a fantastic job, you know, coming in at the end and with the rewrites. So that's a tough one because we love about 90% of it.
Well, you know, with that movie though, you know, I because you mentioned before about how you wanted to go about and expanding on that story. That was a film I remember when I first saw it, you know, after especially after the ending, I just thought that there was a lot. And when I'm saying this here, I'm saying it to point out that there was so much to that story that, you know, I felt like in the movie it did very well in teasing it, not really delving into too much because you're really focusing on one part of the story, but get it enough for you to kind of get a taste of, well, there's a bigger picture out there. So if there's an opportunity to expand on that franchise more or less,
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that. But considering how the film ended, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I won't reveal it, obviously. But I wouldn't see. I just couldn't see how you would continue on with the story,
Yeah.
especially with certain characters that meet their demise. And I'm thinking that was the reason why the film worked, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But you know, there's the thing about this movie is that there's a lot of great performances from everybody, literally from everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But moving on from Copper Bill, the next film that I actually did watch after 90 Feet from Home and Copper Bill was Rodeo Thief. That, to me, in my opinion, is your second best film.
Yeah.
I love that movie. This movie, you know, you shared before and on the show that you had you had a conversation with your wife, and that she shared with you about how she had a conversation with her son, telling him that I've raised you to be a man way more than your father ever had, and then that conversation you felt should be a film, and then from there you expand on the story.
Yeah.
Before that, and then your wife too. When I did review, I actually posted on social media that this was actually one of her favorite productions she's ever done making this movie. So she obviously took a lot of, you know, had a lot of great things about what she experienced on working on that film. So for this movie, on the hand, this is another thing too that I've learned with Robert Keith, that this is the first film you guys ever worked with Robert Keith, who in my opinion I think was fantastic in the film too. So, you know, I've seen this movie, and this is no joke, over 10 times because I really do. Yeah, I love that movie. Like, I really, really do. I love it from start to finish. You know, the only thing I'd said in the review that I did was that I felt like it was too short, and I understand the circumstances, but because there's so much to tell, to dig into, that I'm sure for timing, it just didn't really work out that way. But I thought with what you guys had done and with the narrative worked effectively, in my opinion. But with this film, though, I don't know anything else too much about what your experience was on the set, apart from what you explained to me before in our previous conversation and what your wife had said about her love for that production. But anything else that you can take away from that film, and then what what your experiences was like, and then how you feel about it after the fact?
Yeah, I think I know it was a family affair. I mean, her son Mason is a competitive roper. You know, he goes around the country roping in competitions. He wins. You know, he does really well. He's done some national stuff, and so we were able to pull him and his roping team, and that was looking at the success that Taylor Sheridan's had here in Texas with 1883 and Yellowstone to a certain extent, I really feel like that show has completely fallen off. But 1883 has taken off, on the Western side. If the Rodeo Thief came out today, it'd be a lot more popular because you have all of these people in Texas that are suddenly into roping and reining and cowboys. I mean, everywhere you go, someone's wearing a Yellowstone t-shirt or a Yellowstone hat. So I think the Rodeo Thief just came out at the wrong time, and that's nobody's fault except we produced it before that all became popular.
Yeah.
But the Rodeo Thief was, I think it was her favorite with 90 Feet, those two. But that was an easy shoot. And it's funny to say that because you're working with horses and cattle, but it just, because we had professional, wranglers, I mean, it just was so easy to shoot, and then we had Tom on there, and both Toms, they're just going to do it. Robert was prepared. Sam Mara plays Robert's son. He's an old friend from LA. We knew he was good. We brought him in.
Yeah, he was good.
Nadira was great. It was just one of those productions that when it was over, you're like, man, that was easy, which is very rare. And I know we had sound issues in the movie. We had some things that when the movie came out, we were like, oh, I wish that was, but those were just things that, on a larger budget, you can throw money at problems, and we just had to figure them out, because we didn't have any more money to throw at it. It's up there for me with one of the ones I'm most proud of. I think when it came out, I just really think it came out at the wrong time. And if it came out now, people would really enjoy it, but it's kind of been buried a little bit. And then you have all this, neo-Western genre that's burying it even more with 1883 and the Four Sixes series and Yellowstone. And it's almost, Longmire. You got all this stuff that kind of reminds me of the Rodeo Thief. And so I think it's a great film. I think it's personal, especially in our household. Because you say that when I wrote the script, I wrote the scene with Tom Helm and his mom at the table first. So I'm writing a script where I'm on page like 42. And I'm like, the story is going to start with this conversation about how this mom had to raise her son to be a man and pay for his gate fees and teach him how to throw a football and all that while his father was out in Arizona, locked up and womanizing. And then I went back and wrote everything up to that and then the end. So that was the first time I'd ever done that either. But just hearing the conversation that she told me, I was like, that has to be the backbone of the film. That has to be the scene. And I do think that's one of the stronger scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first times I think we told like Tom Helm, like, you have to get emotional. You have to, and he nailed it, because he did get emotional in everything else we've used. But I think for that scene, I was like, you really have to go there and put yourself in that situation. And he's so good. I
think it's his best performance I've seen him so far in.
Yeah. So
and I think that's one of his favorite too, with the conversation I had with him as well.
Yeah. And it's shot beautifully. Anthony Gutierrez, the roping scenes came out better than we had hoped. Working with horses is tough, but not on that film. I don't know. We just had pros on that one, and they were there, and we would say, this is what we want you to do, and they were like, yeah, we got it. We even had some locals come up and help us wrangle cattle, and it was just an easy production. And it's a good movie in my opinion. I just think it suffers from when it came out, because to be honest with you, there's a lot of people have never seen it, like even friends of ours. Oh, I never saw that one. I'm like, well, it's like 2 years old. But it came out and then just got buried by everything Taylor was doing here in Texas. So,
well, I mean, when you actually told your wife you want to make this into a film, but from that conversation that you had with her, was she kind of hesitant about, I don't know if I want my business out there like that?
No, she was the one, I think, pushing for it because she loves that genre. She loves, being born and raised here is a lot different for me, because when we wrote that, I'd be, typing in final draft and be like, hey, how would you say this? Because I don't know that cowboy lingo, or she'd ask Mason, her son, who's in the movie, in quite a bit of it, you know, what do you guys call this? And when we were on set, I'd say to the ropers, like, hey, how do you do this? Do you go one at a time? And they're like, don't worry about it, we got it, you know. And it's because for me, I'm from New Jersey, you know, I'm like, I didn't even know what the hell a rope, you know, roping a horse meant. I thought it was like tying it up with a rope, you know. And so for me to be in that arena with Anthony on his Steadicam running for our lives from these freaking cows coming at us, it was a different world, you know, but it's just a gorgeous backdrop. And I think that's why it's so successful. You know, we went to the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo here recently. I've never been. Okay. We took my boys, and it's a carnival, and there's 50, 60,000 people there, and they're selling horses and goats and all kinds of stuff, cows. And I'm looking around and I'm like, this is a market. This is a market, much like wrestling is a market and Marvel is a market. This cowboy lifestyle is a market. And that is why, you know, Paramount is cashing in on it, and Taylor is just going to keep that machine going, you know, because people can't get enough of it. So I really wish we could do like a re-release of the film, and, you know, and freshen up the artwork or something and put it back out there. Because, you know, if you do go to Walmart, you go to the end cap, you literally see like 5 seasons of Yellowstone and, you know, all these other Western films. And I'm like, that's where Rodeo Thief needs to be right now, you know. But you know, I think that ship has sailed. So it's just one of those movies that I think becomes like a hidden gem almost, you know, like, you know, so.
Well, you know, so with that movie though, if the opportunity would arise, would you ever consider doing like I guess like a premiere that you guys would set up yourself to announce that, hey, we're doing a watching of the film here at this location? If the opportunity should arise, would you be able to do that? If that
Yeah, for sure. You know, we've considered that. You know, a lot of the industry has changed so much, and the business has changed for us as well. You know, we're no longer in the business of making movies. This is going to sound weird, but to make money. We do make money, and we make good money, and we love our partners and our distributors and our financiers. We love them. But we're in the business now to keep making movies. You know, it becomes less about the money and more about the work. And that's where I think a lot of people fail, is they make a movie because they want to fill a theater at a film festival and show off their work, which there's nothing wrong with that. And they want everyone to come up, pat them on the back, tell them how great it was. And then they get in the car, man, that movie sucked, you know? And I'm like, I no longer need that recognition, nor do I want it. I want to go out there after we get our paycheck and go make 10 more movies. And it's not because I want 10 more paychecks. It's because I want to be able to do something that nobody else is doing, you know? So we've kind of decided like the film festival circuit is really not for our movies at this point. So if we do a premiere, it's a private event, you know, where we rent out a theater and get a red carpet. It's for friends, family, you know, but we're past the point of needing people to tell us their stuff is good or bad, you know, and it just becomes a business, you know, and you have fun at it. So that's kind of where we are on that. But yeah, we did have a premiere for the Rodeo Thief in Dallas at the Angelica.
Okay.
With the USA film people, and it was great, man. It looked awesome. It sounded great. So that was fun. You know, we haven't done it for every movie, but that was one that I think Tiffany specifically, like, I want to see it on the big screen, you know. So, but a lot of them, a lot of them we've never seen, you know, except on our phones or on the television. So,
yeah, that's a film I would like to see on the big screen too. All right, well, so moving on to the next film, and this is a film that I'm gonna be frank with you. I didn't know if I was gonna like it, but when I saw it, I really did enjoy it way more than I anticipated, and that's Honor Among Thieves. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's your first official Western film that you've shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about them. I don't know too much about the you know, the behind the scenes of the story, but as far as I'm concerned, that's your first Western film. And I'm not sure if you were ever a Western fan growing up, you know, watching films. But when I watched the movie, you know, yes, it is a Western movie for sure, but you know, that's not what I saw when I watched the film. If that makes any sense. Like, I saw the movie for for the character's journey of that. Tom plays. I think his name was Bane. Moon Bane. I think I always forget the names of the characters. I'm terrible with that for some reason. But so like I said before, I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it, because Westerns for me are very up and down. I either love them or I hate
I
them.
know.
This is actually one of the very few that I love. So I was very happy with that. But you know, a lot of it does have to do with the actors that you have gotten to play the characters in here. Robert Keith is fantastic in there as well, where I think he does an awesome job playing this kind of over the top character, which I love. And then of course you got Tom Howell, who does a great job with his performance, and many of the actors as well too.
Yeah.
So with that film, I was hoping you can just give me some more insight about what your, you know, how this came to be, what you wanted to get out of it, and then how you feel about it now since it's been released
Yeah.
almost a year at this point.
So the simplest way to put it is we hated filming that movie. The entire team, minus probably some of the cast, was fucking miserable. It was one of the worst. It was probably to this day the worst filming experience all of us had had. And it was just everything you could imagine. We were going down to Manor, Texas. We were staying in this little, you know, middle of nowhere town, which was great. But when we scouted the Western town, we knew we were going to have issues. And the town really wasn't taken care of as much, but we said we can work around it. As soon as we got there day one, a freaking freight train parked right outside the location and was just idle all freaking day. And when it wasn't idle, it was moving. And then there was a construction, like the construction site that just popped up and started the exact day we started. And so there was a point where we were filming where I was like, this is not going to work. There's just sound everywhere, you know, and everyone's trying to calm me down. I'm like, well, we're going to put sounds of like, you know, wind and a train. And I'm like, you don't need to put the train in. Freaking train is there, you know. It was just like, so I think Scott Ross, who did sound on that film, kind of talked me off the ledge a couple times. And plus we were doing 9 days of split days. So what I mean by that is we squeezed 18 days of filming into 9 days by basically working from 6 a.m. till noon, taking 4 or 5 hours off, coming back from 6 p.m. till about 10. So every day we had day shoot and night shoot, and it wore us down. Like we were drenched in sweat. You'd go sit in the air conditioning for 5 hours. You didn't want to come back to set, and everybody rallied, and we had a very small crew on that. And, you know, we filmed it there because they had said, well, you know, we filmed Fear the Walking Dead here, and they did film, and the location looked great, but a lot of issues with power in and out. And, you know, luckily it had bathrooms, and, you know, it was difficult. And I think I am not a Western fan. I didn't grow up watching Western movies. But our distributor had asked us to do 3 Westerns, you know. And so Honor Among Thieves was the first, then we did Buckskin, and then we did the last one. We just wrapped The Bountyman. So I think from a personal perspective, we are done with old time Westerns. And it's difficult to shoot. It's difficult again with horses. You know, we had a lot of horses on that set, and that was fine. We always hire professionals. But we hated it. We hated it. I think when we came home, we didn't even want to watch it. We were like, this movie's gonna suck. You know, it was just, and then when it was done, you know, Jeff Hamm worked his magic, and Andy Arrowsmith, I think, just his character of Telly really saved it for me, because he was so over the top. I was like, oh, this is a breath of fresh air, because I'm like bored, and then boom, this guy comes out in his white coat, and he's, you know, and then Tom Hallam and Liz were magic in the movie together, and Robert was unbelievably great as the bad guy there. So looking back on it, I mean, it's a fun movie to watch. I don't think I've watched it since it premiered, because it just reminds me of how shitty of a process it was to make. But you know, that was our first attempt at a old time, you know, 1800s Western. And there's tons of things when I watched them, like, ooh, you know, like, but we worked with what we had, you know, right. And I think for the budget we had for it and the location, everything, it's a home run, but definitely not in my top favorite movies of our work.
So out of all the films you've shot, this was one of the absolute worst you've experienced as far as
it was the worst. Besides Kreep, which never really came out,
right,
which was my first experience, this was the worst. And if Tiff was sitting here, she'd say, yeah, it was freaking horrible. It was just the elements. It was so it was so brutal and taxing. I think everybody lost like 20 pounds from sweat and just not eating. And it was super ambitious. I'm like, we're going to do day shoots, take the afternoon off. And it was like, what are we doing? You know, but we couldn't afford to shoot for 18 days. We had enough for 9, you know? So, so it turned out great. But
yeah, I like the film. I still like it to this day.
Yeah.
I've seen the movie. I lost count. I think maybe 5-6 times, something like that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I did enjoy the film. I took a lot
Yeah.
from it, way more than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Because
For sure.
so the fact that you said that, I'm actually going to watch the film, you know, somewhere down the line, and think about what you just said there. But I mean, that's the beauty of filmmaking, is you already know that when you watch the movie, you're not thinking of those things. At least for me. But hearing what you said now, I'm probably gonna have a little more
Yeah.
on getting to observe the movie. But
Yeah.
you know, I think that, you know, like I said before, you know, the Western genre for me is a hit and miss. There's very few out there that are really, really good for me personally, and there's some that are just not that great.
Yeah. I agree.
So, and the fact that you told me that that's just now that you never really grew up watching Westerns, I was a little, you know, I was going to ask you, but you've already answered my question, is that if that was a genre you wanted to take just for the challenges of it, but obviously that's, you know, we already know the answer to that there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay.
They're fun, but they're hard, man.
Yeah. Well, if you ever were to do one, I know you said now you're not going to do one for at least for a while, but if you were to do another one again, I'm assuming that with what you've experienced in at least these 3 productions here, you may, I would hope that if more money and more time would be available for you, I hope that that would be a film that you can definitely take it up to a whole nother level. Because
Yeah.
I saw, because it's obvious that, you know, when you watch Honorable Things, it's definitely a small budgeted film, but I never really felt that way about it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sure.
I
Yeah.
felt like that was definitely a film that you had, in my opinion, had accomplished with making an entertaining movie for me personally.
Yeah.
But
No,
this leads
that's good.
into the next film, the elephant in the room, if you will, Buckskin. Okay. So Buckskin, I already told you before that I saw this movie, the DVD on in Walmart, and I didn't buy it at the time, but I remember because I was kind of just figuring out what I wanted to spend my money on. So I ended up buying
Sure.
Whitetail, and then I came back and bought Buckskin. So when I saw it the first time, I told you before that I saw it, and I was speechless because I had no idea what I saw. And then again, I said before that that's not meant to be a negative.
Yeah.
So I went back and watched it again, saw it the second time, and then I got it more. I was able to understand what was going on. And every time I go back to watch the movie, this is one of the very few films, for some reason, I feel compelled to go back and watch, because I feel like that the more I watch it, the better I understand the story, the better I understand what's going on, especially towards the end. Because that was the thing that really kind of like threw me off. And again, not to be negative, but when I say that, but it's what threw me off here, because I was expecting a kind of more or less like a very standard fare type of ending, and wasn't like that at all. So that being said, this is a film that you had said was one of your most personal films, and at the time you were going through some personal issues that you, in a lot of ways, where you were using this as kind of as an outlet. And then
Yeah.
you mentioned before in a conversation we had in the previous episode that you had wanted Tom Zimbra to stick verbatim to the script, like he cannot
Yeah.
alter a
Yeah.
single thing
Yeah.
with what was going to be said in the for this character's lines. And you know, when I heard that story, watched the film since then, you know, I have a different perspective on the movie now, considering what the amount of turmoil that Tom had gone through, that more or less you had kind of put him through. And you definitely get it in one of his best performances. In fact, in my opinion, I think it's his absolute best performance.
Me too. Yeah.
So, you know, I was hoping that you can clarify some things about, maybe from Tom's perspective, about what he feels about the movie, along with how you feel about it now since it's been released. Because I know, I'm not sure what the general consensus was of the movie, other than either people love it or hate it. I'm one of those that actually love it. But for you, since the film has been released, are the sentiments you had making the movie, putting it together, and how it's been released, has anything changed for you along the way as far as how you look at the film, or is everything still exactly the same from when it was the first time you thought of it?
So Buckskin for me is, there's 2 moments that if I were to have to make a time capsule and put 2 or 3 clips, I'd put the end of 90 Feet in there, that last scene, and probably the last 10 minutes of Buckskin. I might only put the last 10 minutes of Buckskin in there. If you take it back from the confrontation with the child through the end, I think that that's a short film in and of itself. And my thing with Buckskin is, I know we talked about this, Tom Hallam was supposed to have that role of Porter, and he was blessed to get Fear the Walking Dead, and I said, go do that. That's a career making thing. This is a low budget, indie film. And so I gave Tom Zembrad about 3 days to learn 80 pages of dialogue. It's like, and he was working at the time with Six Flags, a contract with Six Flags here in Arlington. And so he did not sleep for the entire 8 or 9 day shoot. And I didn't want him to. I wanted him to. We were talking about this on set last night. Like, I broke that guy down, and I only did it because he's one of my dearest friends, to nothing. I would not let him sleep. I had him running around when everyone was like, let him sit. And I'm like, no, it was just, I wanted him to be as emotionally and physically drained as possible. And if you watch that film now, he looks physically ill in the movie. And there's no way we could have gotten that without me just pushing and pushing and pushing. And I would tell him, look, if it's too much, tell me. And he would just nod, no, stay in character, tell me to get off set, But Buckskin for me is a movie that I don't think 90% of the people that watch it understand. And it could be that it's just so dense of a project and a script that people don't want to take the time to watch it 2 or 3 times. Or it could be that there's no superhero with a cape in it, or it's not, animated. I don't know what it is, but it's either a 1 or a 10 on IMDb. There is no in between, and which is fine. But I really just don't think anybody understands. I think they're expecting The Revenant, which, it is my love letter to that film, because when that film came out, it changed my perspective on filmmaking completely, and hearing the stories of how they shot that, I wanted to push the crew to the limit. And we did. I mean, it was freezing cold and it was windy, and I wanted every scene to look a specific way, and they would just keep doing it until I got it right. And it started pissing the crew off. And there's one specific scene where Tiffany's character comes over this hill, and I wanted Tom Zembrad to look the way he looked when he was in his prime as a trapper. I mean, hair slicked back, perfect beard. And he comes out and he looks at his wife on the hill, and he looks away for a split second. He looks back, she's gone. And everybody on set is like, why the hell are we filming this? This isn't in the script. It doesn't make any sense. And I was just like, I don't give a shit. I want it. And it will make sense in a flashback. And then when it came out, they were like, oh, okay, I get it. But they didn't really get it, because even to this day, if I was to ask, Anthony or whoever, what does that scene mean? They don't know. And we changed the ending of the movie on the fly. We're in the cabin filming at the Heritage Museum. And I look at Anthony and I go, what if this happens instead of what's in the script? And he's like, is that what you want to do? And I looked at Tiffany and I was like, looked at Sinine and I was like, yeah, I think so. And they were like, well, you know what this means? Like, this movie just took a really dark turn. And I'm like, I don't care. It was like, let's do it. We didn't even shoot it both ways. We just shot it with the new ending. And I said, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And to me, it worked, man. That movie, I will start crying at the end of that movie every time. That last 10 minutes is like, to me, is just a knife. It is. Even Tiffany will say, like, she has a hard time watching it because it makes her emotional. She's like, I don't know why. It makes me sad and depressed. And I think that's just how that world was, though. I think I tell people this all the time, like, the reason I didn't let Tom go off script is because I told him, I was like, that's me, like, you have to say it like it's on the paper, because that's what I'm saying. It's not like I wrote it for Tom Hallam or Robert Keith. And I'm like, you can change this and make it sound like I want it to come out the way I would say it. And Tom was like, if that's what you want, that's what we're going to do, And so it's hard to explain. Obviously, I'm not a trapper, I didn't have my children die. I didn't, there's no plague. But everything in that movie, I know you saw it, had that reaction. A friend of mine, Kyle Jonathan, that does movie reviews, I sent it to him, and he just could not stop talking about it. And one of the things we drew a comparison to was The Passion of the Christ. When that movie ended, you sat in the theater completely shocked at what you just saw, and you didn't know if you should get up and leave the theater or sit there for another week. Like, you just had no idea. You were struck. You either were too emotional to get up, or you just didn't know how to react. And Kyle's like, I don't know what just happened. He's like your reaction, like, what did I just watch? Because I didn't tell him anything about it. So here's a Western, watch it. And when he watched it, he's like, what is going on here? And finally, I think I got to the crux of it when I was doing an interview for something about the movie. And I said, here's the thing. The flashbacks in the movie where he sees his wife come from this, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what happens when we die. I could be completely wrong, but we all have our beliefs, our faiths, and different things. And I just happen to have faith. And when you die, you go to heaven or hell. I think those places exist. And there's a lot of people, friends of mine, don't think either exists, or maybe one exists, or we come back as grass, whatever it is,
the circle of life.
Yeah, this is what I choose to believe. I choose that when you die, you're held accountable for everything that you've done, and a decision is made, and that's where you go, one or the other. So I kind of, as I'm getting older, at 40, I'm starting to realize, okay, I need to start making, better decisions, because if that's what happens, I want to make sure I get to the place where my family and dog is and all that, and because I've always had this notion, and even in film, it's there. You better be prepared for that, because if you're not, the consequences are really bad. At least I believe. Okay. So it's like having a gun. You may never use it, but you want to make sure you have it for that one instance when you may need it. And it's just a tool, and so the issue with the flashbacks for me is I wanted to show this consequence of this guy. When he dies, he is stuck in the buckskin woods for the rest of eternity, searching to get home. I'm like, and I don't think people understood that. So he sees his wife, but she's not there, and he cannot get there. His penalty for his sins with I can't remember the name of the Indians we used. The natives, the Ree. Yeah. His penalty for that is, for all the natives' blood that he spilled, he now is entrapped after death, or in the afterlife, in those woods, constantly moving through them, trying to get to his wife on that hill, and he never will. And I think,
so purgatory,
and then there's Robert Keith's consequence, of being obsessed with business and money and losing what he loses, and knowing that he's going to lose something, but trying to have this faith that it's going to happen, because he has that line at the end, like, I knew this was going to happen. But he was still hoping that Porter could put the puzzle together and change the outcome of that film, And so it's just a huge metaphor for having to face the consequences of what you do in life. And I don't think many people understood that. I think they saw it as just, this guy's miserable, and he goes back into these woods where he killed a bunch of people, and all this crazy shit happens. The scene with him and the child at the end, I think, is jarring. I think everywhere we show it, people see that scene and they go, holy shit, Brett just went there, and I'm like, consequence of what this guy, he's had to do it again. Now there's a consequence of that action, and then the end, that music, and that last beat that Tiffany gives, where she looks at the camera, to me is like, she gets it, she gets it. And that's what I wanted the viewers to have, that moment where they're like, okay, and then it cuts and you're stuck in your seat, and you have that Passion of the Christ moment where you're like, and the funny thing is, nobody has seen the movie except Robert Keith came over with Judy, his wife, Tom Zimbrod. We're sitting in our living room watching it. The movie ends and everybody's crying. everybody, Robert's got his hand over his mouth. His wife's tearing up. Tiffany's in tears. I'm tearing up. Tom Zimrod's completely quiet, which never happens. And we all just look at each other, and Robert goes, wow. And he looks at Tom and he goes, Tommy, it's just, so anyway, but I think that buckskin, for me, the last 10 minutes of that film would be something that if I had to leave on Earth, I'd say, watch the last 10 minutes of that movie. That's who I was. And then See ya. You know.
I pointed out before with my conversation with Robert that to me, I think that's his absolute best performance, because you get a wide range of like personality from him, where he's very demanding, very obsessive, and very cold, and he could also be very emotional, very understanding, very compassionate. Like he has that, within the short span of time he's in the film, but you get to see all those wide ranges of emotions. Um, and we'll get into Meteor in a little bit here, but to me, that was like you get to see the arsenal of his acting capabilities, of what he's able to pull it off here. So apart from Zimbra being really good in the movie, but for me, the other standout, in my opinion, is
Yeah.
Robert, which I think he does a lot to help sell the story, to help sell the film, in my opinion. That's actually one of the reasons why I kept going back to the movie, because I take away more from him. I'm not saying I don't take anything from Zimbra. That's not what I'm getting at. But with Robert's character in the movie, without him, I don't know if the story would actually work as well to really kind of push, the direction that you were going for here. So I did take away a lot from the movie, and I still do to this day, even though when I go back. And here's a funny thing too: the film is like what, maybe 80 minutes, something like that, somewhere around that time frame. But I feel like there's a lot more to unpackage when you watch the film, and every time I go watch it, there's more and more that I take away from there. So, but again, I can go off on a tangent with that as well. So, and that's one of the reasons why we were wanting to have this conversation, because I really wanted to highlight this film, because I think, in my opinion, this is actually one of your most underrated films, but one of the most underrated films I've seen in the last year, where when I saw it, I remember thinking, and I'm not going to lie about this here, but I remember thinking no one's going to get this movie. And I mean that, to be, not to be disrespectful, but I just remember thinking like, no one's going to get this film, because, I have a patience to watch movie. And, as you can tell from my background, I watch a shit ton of films. But I knew right away that I can't go to my wife and say, hey, you should watch this movie, because this is what I picked out. And then she's going to look at the first 10 minutes like, I have no idea what's going on. And, and to me, that's always one of those things where if you can get one person to watch it that probably won't get it, and then will get it the second or third time around, then, in my opinion, the film accomplishes what you're intending on here. So from my perspective, I think it took a while for me to get it, but once I got it, I was in. So, if anything, if you have reached one person, you reach me. So,
yeah, it's funny you say that. Real quick, I remember where I was reading it. It was an interview with somebody in the film industry, and they were like, sometimes pissing off one viewer is better than pleasing one, because he'll say, man, did you see Bugskin? It was so good. Oh yeah, I'll check that out sometime. But if he goes, man, I watched Bugskin, that movie sucks, that other person he's talking to is going to want to check that movie out.
Well, I hope so. But, again, that's the word of mouth here, for it's a fickle thing. You don't know what's going to lead up to. And
for sure,
what I like to accomplish here with this is that to instill confidence in the person that watches and listens, and say, all right, let me just check the film out. That's what I'm hoping would happen here, because
for sure,
but it's a fickle thing. We just don't know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah.
So, moving on to the next one here. Outlaws Buckles. Believe it or not, this is the one film that I've seen the least out of all the films you've done. And I'm not saying it's a bad one, because I did enjoy the film, but I've only seen it, I think, twice. First time I saw it last year, and then I saw it again rather recently. I think maybe about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken. And there's not a whole lot that I gather from this movie, from the films you shot, about any sort of insight, other than maybe what Anthony had shared before in my conversation with him about how he shot the film and whatnot. But this movie, on the other hand, I was curious about what had inspired to write this film, because this is more of a thriller, which I appreciated. But I was honestly not sure what to really take away from the film. I like the movie, but again, I've only seen it twice, and out of all the films, it's the one I go back to the least. Not because I didn't like it, I did, but for whatever reason, I'm still trying to get myself back to watching it again. But if I see Rodeo Thief, I'm gonna watch that instead.
Sure.
I'm getting up. So I was hoping that you can share some insight about that particular film to open up the gates here about what it was that you were thinking of making the movie, and how you feel about it now.
I did. If we talk about Honor Among Thieves being down here, Outlaws Buckle was just slightly above it in terms of horrible experiences on a movie set. And this was because we shot this movie in the middle of a blizzard, and it was so cold in the prison, and sometimes the water worked and sometimes it didn't. The electricity was spotty. There were people coming in and out of that building that we didn't know. And so you had bogeys all over the place. And it was just so cold. And people don't believe me, but we had a 7-8 day shoot. We ended up shooting that movie in 4 days. So we pulled like 4 13-hour days and got everybody off the icy roads. It was like the biggest ice storm to ever hit Texas happened in the middle of that filming. So we were like, we either finish the movie now or we don't, because we lost Andy to Amazon. You know, he went to work on the new Lord of the Rings series and all this big stuff. The guy who plays Aerosmith.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Andy came up to me in the middle of day 2 and he's like, hey man, I just booked Amazon. I said, for what? And he's like, the Lord of the Rings prequel. And I'm like, holy shit. And he's like, so I have to leave tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, we're going to shoot all of Andy's stuff tonight. So call your loved ones. You're not going home. You know, there really wasn't a whole lot of backstory to it. It was an idea I had about this belt buckle that's worth, because I read somewhere online that some of these belt buckles from the 1900s are worth $250,000. So I said, what if everybody in this prison during a storm is trying to find this belt buckle that was booked in by this Abner outlaw, and everybody's a suspect, you know? So it was kind of like Clue with 4 people in a prison. But again, because we only had the 4 days, we lost a lot of the script because we just didn't have time to shoot it. And we added in a lot of like mysterious looking around and clearing rooms, and Rachel Whittle and Tom Hallam, you know, we're like, look, you know, we're losing this scene. You guys are just going to walk down this hallway very slow and check all the rooms. And they're like, okay, you know. So did it come out the way we wanted? Probably not. Copland, which I think is a very underestimated movie. Yeah. I gave Tom Hallam that Sylvester Stallone character, and you know, Tom gained weight for the role and everything, and grew a mustache, and I was like, that's who you are. You're this frumpy kind of miserable guy working in a county jail, but then you flip and your character changes. The strongest part of that movie, I think, is Rachel's character turn. Yeah. And it's awesome. I won't spoil it because that movie still is coming out at Walmart in April. So a lot of people haven't seen it yet, but it's just a kind of, I mean, we had to lose a lot of the horse stuff we had planned for it. And it was just like, I had to call the distributor and be like, look, man, this is the middle of a blizzard. I can't do any more than this, but I showed it to them and they were like, it'll work. It's good. Ton of negative reviews for it. It's probably our least favorable reviewed movie, but I don't care, you know. But it was difficult shoot, great acting. Yeah, it was just tough. That was a tough one. So it'll be interesting once it comes out on DVD. We seem to get an influx of reviews, so we'll see them. Because I'm not gonna lie, I do read them, but I've learned to not let them bother me as much as they used to. Right. But that one, man, people shit on that movie all the time. You know, and I'm like, if well, you only do.
I didn't hate the movie at all. I do remember thinking like that. I don't know. I don't believe like I have like a sense of something, but it's just that I remember thinking like something's off about the movie because I remember like it had like a certain direction of the story, and then it kind of shifted, but the way it shifted actually worked better in this film than it did in Copper Bill, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I felt like, you know, with the direction of the story, it worked fine. And I think it's probably the reason why I didn't go back and watch again, because I felt like there something I didn't connect with the film in that respect, but I did like it for what it was. Yeah. But regardless of that, though, you know, I understand there's the word of mouth for some people, or it's not that it's a good movie. I hope they give it a shot and give, you know,
sure. Yeah, it has moments that I think.
Yeah, I think it has great moments too. Yeah, for sure. Tom is fantastic as always, and everyone was great in the movie. All right, so now next film. Meteor. So this is a film that I've already done a review here on the channel where, you know, you mentioned before in the conversation we've had that this was basically a very introverted disaster film where there's virtually no disaster. It's everything occurs after the initial meteor impact, and the story takes place 10 years after the fact. Yeah. So I remember, and I said it in the review too, the first 10 minutes of the film, I honestly thought, if it's going to be like this the entire way, I'm going to have to fight through to watch this movie. But thankfully, you know, it did pick up once, I forgot the character's name, the young girl that's in the
Olivia
movie. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So once she came in, then the whole story changed from there, and then the pacing changed a little bit too. And then it became very steady for me at that point. And then when Tom Helm's character, who plays Zephyr in the movie, who I think is like, if there's a cool looking character in all the films you've done, Zephyr's the guy. And I know Tom mentioned before that there might be a possibility of a talks of a potential prequel, something around that character, which I hope does come to fruition. But that was a film that to me was like, I kind of looked at it where all the things you've done so well in, and then trying to go the opposite direction as far as, getting, this being a disaster film and being the exact opposite of that. It took a while for me to get into it, but upon repeat viewing, which I've seen the film and I remember 6 times, each time I watch the film, I start to like it more and more and more. So in my opinion, this is one of those like underrated films that you've done that I think if people give it the time of the day, they actually may take something from it, especially with the ending, which I'm not going to reveal for anybody who hasn't seen it. But that ending really changed my whole perspective of the movie. Like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
So, with that film, I know you shared that you wanted Robert to play the part here, and he obviously was very all for it. One of his best performances, I think, is the second best performance in my opinion. I don't know what the word of mouth, because I've never looked into reviews outside of like maybe 1 or 2. But I remember just hearing that it's not a disaster film, and the other one was like, it's not that bad. It was something along those lines. And so I am curious to hear about your thoughts on it now, having seen the film and shooting and whatnot. How you feel how the film looks to you since it was released on DVD and now available on the streaming platforms here.
Yeah, I called Robert, or we may have gone to lunch at the time, and I said, look, you're up type of deal. Batter up. We're going to put you in a lead, and here's who you're going to be. I want you to watch every Tommy Lee Jones movie you can find, and that's who you are. You're just a sad shell of a man, and he nailed it. And, he struggled with it because Robert is such a good character and everything else, but he gets to like explode and really show some chops. And I said, we got to strip all that down. You're just the whole time. And he's like, got it. So there were moments where he'd be like, can I do that again? Cause I went here and I'm like, yeah. So Robert did a tremendous job, fantastic job. Tom Hallam's character was based off of Logan. I don't know the character's name, but the guy that was also in Narcos, that actor, when he was in Logan, he had a fake hand and a gold tooth. And I said, that's Tom Hallam in this movie. And Tom was like, got it. Redid his hair. We dyed his hair. We gave him tattoos up his neck, which he wore offset. So every place he went, people were staring at his neck because he's got this skull, and I just told Tom, I said, sadistic and evil, and he nailed it, And so with Meteor, the interesting thing is, I think it suffers from tremendously cool artwork on the cover, and then a complete kind of bait and switch on the movie. Now that obviously isn't my decision, but it's done for overseas sales, I think, mostly. Like, in some markets, they see that and they watch it, and the movie actually gets much better reviews on YouTube from overseas than it does in America. And I think it's because, they see the cover in America on the shelf and they get it expecting The Rock saving California on the San Andreas Fault, and then overseas, they don't see the cover. They just watch it online and enjoy the story. But with everything else that we've done, this was the start of B22's genre films, disaster movie, shark movie. We knew a war movie. We knew we wanted to get into that because that's where our distributor was pushing us, saying, look, these movies, I can finance these today. Has to be this genre, that, blah, blah, blah. So when they came to us with the disaster idea, we kicked around Avalanche, Tornado, and I said, let's do a Meteor. That's a nice segue, a nice easy one with CG, and Jeff Hamm did a tremendous job with that. But I always said, and I told Stu and the other guys, every one of these goofy movies, okay, what I mean by goofy is like Meteor, a shark, is going to be a movie where the meteor is a metaphor for something else. That's the only way I'm going to do it. So with Meteor, the meteor is a metaphor for death. The meteor comes and kills everything good in Robert's life. And all he wants is to die. It's an extremely sad, suicidal type of movie.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the ending sticks, is because you don't expect it to be as dark, I think, as it is. It's not that dark, but and not to spoil it, but people even on set were like, why is he doing that? Why is that happening to him? And you probably know what I mean. And I'm like, because that's what he's been searching for this whole time. And as sick and twisted as it is, that's the only thing that'll set him free at this point. And they're like, oh, okay, but so to me, Meteor was the first of our genre films. I think it's great.
I like it.
It's a slow burn,
Yep.
but it was intended to be that way, with spurts of violence, which we have with Zephyr, and the shootouts and that ending. The thing that sticks out most to me is Tom Holland's Woody Woodpecker impression towards the end of the film, completely ad-libbed. And when he did it, he was like, we're not going to use that, right? I'm like, no. And it was like the first thing we put together at the end was the Woody Woodpecker.
I remember I burst out laughing when I saw that. I was like,
oh, it's too much, man. I'm like, what is he doing? But and also when he comes into the house and he's like, Lucy, I'm home.
Yeah.
He brings that to set. You're just like, wherever that came from. But the Meteor is a metaphor in that movie for death and suicide. So it's one of my favorites. I think we all enjoy that one. That's one that I can put on in the background when I'm doing other stuff, and like I'll be doing something and I'll look over and I'll watch it for 30 minutes. Like, oh yeah, I got to finish this. It kind of draws me in.
Yes, it does for me too. And here's what I want to point out too about Meteor. One of my favorite scenes in the film, and you've talked before in the past, one of our previous interviews. I think it was I might have been with Anthony. I could be wrong, but anyways, that 7-minute sequence. I love that sequence in the movie.
Yeah,
I remember when I first saw it. I remember being invested and just seeing it all the way through, not thinking anything about what was going on in the background. I was just fully immersed with the scene. As cliche as it may sound for me to say that, but I really did feel that way. So when I saw that, I remember then the next set of events occurred. I literally had to stop, rewind it just to make sure that, it was actually what I thought it was. And it was beautiful. One of my favorite sequences you've done. I don't know how difficult it was for you guys to shoot that, but I would imagine that, because Robert did kind of tell me what he had to do to rehearse for that. And you mentioned before it was one take and it was all the way through. I don't remember if you mentioned before if you had to do it again just to kind of make sure you have a backup just to be on the safe side. But if you can explain more about that, because that was one of my absolute favorite things you've ever done in my opinion.
That it's beautiful. It's 7.5 minutes, and we had coverages set up. And I looked at Anthony. I'm like, "You're on your Steadicam. Let's just do it in one." He's like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm game." It was extremely difficult to do because she's shooting. And then eventually she does hit her target. And so we had to have Tom Zembrod right off camera pointing his pellet gun at that jar. And when she pulls the trigger, he has to pull his and it has to shatter that glass. So I was like, everything can be great before that. And if we don't get that, we'll get a special of the glass breaking. And then Anthony's like, but if we're doing it in one take, why are we going to? I'm like, okay, you're right. So the landowners were there for the location and they wanted to watch that scene. I don't know why, they just wanted to see it. At the end of it, they were in tears, and I was kind of like, really? Like, I don't think that was my strongest, writing, but it's an emotional scene. And I had to do a lot of research in the dialogue for that scene because it's about death and losing. And I've lost, both my parents are passed and, but I've never lost a wife, so I did read a lot of depressing letters, from people that have lost their spouse, letters to their children, suicide notes. Like it was that kind of research where I'm like, my wife comes home and looks at the history on the computer. She's gonna be like, Brett's gonna kill himself. Like it would look like that. And I'm like, how to say goodbye in a suicide note. Not for me. It's
how to
research,
draft a suicide letter for Brett. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all stood exactly behind Anthony, and wherever he moved, we all had to take steps right behind him. So it kind of looked like a video game, shooter where everybody was right behind Anthony. And then Anthony actually counts her down like 3, 2, 1, and Tom Zembrod shoots it. And it worked on the first take. And I told Robert and Olivia, I'm like, you can't stutter. If you stutter, we have to stop. And he did stutter once, but it worked for the scene.
Yeah.
And it was like he was choking up. So it worked perfect. So we shot the whole thing once and we looked at each other like, are we good? And Anthony's like, let's do another one for safety, but the safety didn't turn out as well. So so we went with the first take. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like that before. For that long, for him not to drop the camera or them drop a line or the glass not break or the gun not, it was like everything worked out perfect for that scene. So it was like it was meant to be.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, when I first saw the scene, I was like, I was actually blown away with how well everything was choreographed as far as the movements were concerned. Because like I said before, I just couldn't, when I saw it for the first time, and I know I repeated myself, but I just had to go back and watch it again just to make sure that I just see what I happen to see, because
for sure,
it was so good. I still think it's one of your absolute best sequences you've ever shot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. So now moving on to the next film. This is going to be for Operation Overlord.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna be very careful how I'm going to say this here, because I don't like to shit on anybody's work, but quite frankly, that's my least favorite film you've done.
Yeah.
But I did appreciate the approach you were going with the story, keeping it really simple and having a reason why you have the two characters, and Billy Blair and Tom Howe, who are the best things about the movie, along with Robert, of course. But that to me, honestly, it's gonna be funny. As much as I did like Outlaws Bucko, and that was the least of it's out of all the films, it's the one I have seen the least twice. I still go back and watch Operation Overlord, because there's something about the story that I did actually like, as I like the attempts of what you guys were going for. All the German characters, all the actors are speaking German, having the accent, the costuming, and so on and so forth. But that being said, though, it was a film that I least connected with out of all the films you've done.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the ambitiousness that came with the film, that I really did gravitate to. And I'm being honest when I say that here. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts now about, because I shared this with you in the past in the messaging, how I felt about the film. But I believe the general consensus with the movie, if I recall correctly, there was one review that I came across that actually was really good, and I was like, okay, great. So they got it. I personally didn't connect with it, but I'm glad they got it. But for you now, with the film being released, has your view on the film changed a little bit? Because that to me is a very divisive film as far as B22 Films are concerned, because it's either you're gonna really like it, or you're not gonna like it at all. I unfortunately was one of those that didn't like it that much. But for you, how do you feel about it now?
It was an interesting thing. I think at the time we had said this is going to be our 10th feature film.
Right.
Okay. We knew it was going to be a genre film. We just come off of Meteor. And I said, look, it's, film number 10. So Tiff and I went to dinner, and I said, let's do some stunts, which we never really do. We did some in the Rodeo Thief where we dragged a guy. Right. So we reached out to Robert and Tom and Kurt Wheeler, and I said, who do you know? And they said, we know a guy that can burn himself. I said, done. We are going to burn a Nazi in this movie. That got me super hyped, and everyone's like, oh, it's because you're half Jewish and you want, I'm like, no, it's because nobody in the North Texas film industry has the balls to go get a guy from LA and say, we're going to light you on fire. And it might be because they don't have insurance. It might be because they're afraid. Our people are not afraid. We've got 3 stunt guys who have been doing stunts in Robert, Kurt, and Tom for 30, 40 years. We were completely confident in Sean when he showed up. Sean was like, I can do this. I could jump out a window on fire. I'm like, well, no, let's just burn you,
I would love to see him that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we were thinking about it, but we were worried if he was on the roof, he might fall through it because the location was so run down. So we just decided we're going to burn a guy. We're going to have a bunch of Americans killing Nazis. We're going, what's that movie? We're going to go Inglourious Bastards on it, and we're going to keep the language course. And we wanted the buddy road comedy with Tom and Billy, and so the script on that one was written, but it kept evolving. We had some fight sequences, a little more gore than we normally do. It's pretty brutal. We're shooting people in the head. I made a cameo in the movie, and so it's a lot of people don't know it, but so when the guys come up to the second story of the compound, they're talking, and this Nazi comes up behind and lights a cigarette and screams that they're Jews and starts shooting, and Billy shoots him. Well, that's me, because we just didn't have another body. So they put me in the German And I was like, just make it so blurry so you can't tell it's me. But the story goes that I was like, if I'm gonna die, you're gonna remember that Nazi got killed. So I get shot, and for some reason I told my body to just do whatever you want, and I put the gun down.
Like,
Yeah,
I remember it now.
Start falling and falling, like I won't go down, and then I finally go down. We had such a hard time editing that because everyone just busts out laughing the minute I fall. It was just, and they made memes about it where I'm like doing this weird German Nazi death dance, and so it was hilarious. But that was it for me. I was like, I'm not going to be in any more movies. But so I think it's a fun movie. I don't think there's as much of a message behind it than anything else we've done.
Right.
I will say, I told George, who's our composer, I said, I want the score to be memorable, and he freaking nailed it.
I love that about the movie. I'll say that. I will say, yes.
The score is unreal. Like that opening, I always wanted the Rocky theme.
That's the first thing I thought of too. Yeah.
It's like fill the screen with the letters and put the score behind it. And I think that's what most people like about the movie, because we used the score only twice, there and during a flashback with Tiffany and Tom Hallam, which is, the flashback was the hardest part to shoot because we didn't like the location, but it was the strongest moment in the film.
Yeah, I agree.
And Billy's scene with Tom, not to give away too much, there's one scene with them in particular that Billy is just on another level acting wise, I think, for him. And Tom did tremendous. So that movie to me is just, it was our 10th film. We wanted to do stuff we've never done, so we did it, and it's just a fun movie. That's another one I can put on in the background because the music's good and there's some really funny lines in there.
Yeah.
Billy's got some comedic stuff going on, and I just,
10. What'd you say?
Yeah.
10. You said 999. I said 10.
I said you're gonna grab his face and he's gonna say 999. You're gonna grab him and go 999, and boom, 10. And Billy, I think at first was like, "That's funny, man. I'm gonna do that again," And I was like, nobody else got it but him and I. Everyone else was like, "Why is he?"
I know, I got it right away. I thought that was one of the funniest bits here. And then I love, like I said, I love, because you mentioned before, and I've said it before too, that that Hallam and Blair's chemistry on screen together. These guys are fucking gems.
Yeah, they're so good.
So I think that with what they were able to pull off in this film together, really showcases of the strong partnership they have. But with that movie though, I said, I've already shared my thoughts here, but like I said before, I go back and watch that film, and there's something about that movie, at least for me personally, that has a rewatchability factor that I really do connect with, despite what I feel about it. But I still actually enjoy aspects of the movie, mainly because of the characters. To be completely honest, Billy Blair, Tom Hallam, and even Robert Keith, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, for sure.
But and I'm sure you've already mentioned before, and I think at one point in the past, about how the reviews were either up in the air about how this can be liked or disliked. But hearing the thoughts of it now, moving forward with it here, does that kind of give you a different perspective about how you view the film on a more on a personal level? Because you guys you wanted to make a film that you mentioned before has like the least amount of messaging, that because World War II, it's pretty simple, good guys versus bad guys, and we want the good guys to win. But with the story though, does your feeling towards the film change a little bit when you hear the reaction about what people are saying about the movie, or is it still consistently the same how you felt about it when you finally had it released?
It used to affect me a lot more.
Okay.
Nowadays, I think I go into it knowing that I'm not going to please the majority of people. We had people go, "Well, they're not wearing their chin straps. They're not wearing the appropriate attire." Well, I had told Stacey Lee, I don't want them. Inglourious Bastards, those costumes are so wrong for the time period. But did Tarantino go, "You know what? I failed you guys"? He didn't give a shit. That's his vision for the film. So I had told Stacey, like, I want the Nazis to look different. I want the American soldiers to be simple. Their uniforms aren't dirty enough. Their boots don't have the right color laces. And that was my main thing. Rico here, who does he's an amazing sound designer and capturer on set. He had mentioned to me, like, this is wrong, that's wrong, but Rico was like, look, it's a movie. And if we were making a documentary, that would upset him. you know, because he's a veteran, he's a Marine, you know, and I did go to him and say, how would he hold the gun? And he's fantastic, but he understood that this is a fictional story about something that really did happen, but it is not a documentary. And so they don't have their straps on. And the funniest thing we did in that movie was when we were filming it, a gentleman who did not get a role in the film was so bitter that he didn't get this role that he went on social media and took a screen grab and said, these guys are making a mockery of veterans because they're not wearing their chin straps. And so in the movie, I had Billy Blair during a complete serious moment look at Tom Helm and go, wait, should we put the chin straps on? And Tom Helm goes, fuck the straps, and they walk off. And we did that just for that guy. He knows who he is. So we could tell him, this is a movie, dude. This is not a World War II documentary. It's not even close to what really happened, you know, with Operation Overlord. It's right. Just, so I think that's how I handle it now. It's like, well, can we poke fun at it? If not, we just move on. But if we can, we're going to, you know? Well, and so.
Yeah, well, I like I said, I go back and watch the film. Honestly, funny enough, because like I said before, for some reason, I still get something out of the movie, but it's not always, it's not common for me to do that often, but I do enjoy the film to a point.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so the next film, Bull Shark. Yeah. So now this is a film that, you know, you sent me before, and I said it before in the review. I wasn't sure what to expect because when you had first talked about the film last year with me, where, you know, it was a crazy little shark movie that I told you before, that the first thing that crossed my mind was sci-fi, and I was thinking, is that the direction you're gonna be going with that story?
Right.
And I did have some hesitations, like I don't know if it'll be any good. So again, I mentioned before in the review that I actually did like it. In fact, I messaged you before that, hey, this is actually a really good film. I did enjoy the movie a lot more than I anticipated.
Sure.
For a number of different reasons, of course. But you know, you mentioned before, and I know Jeff had told this to me too in the past, that this was one of the toughest shoots you guys had ever done because working on water is not easy by any means.
It's not easy.
So, and here's the thing, and I think you obviously know the story here, but Jeff was telling me about where you guys had rented the boat to shoot a certain sequence, and apparently the company you guys were using to rent that boat from, they gave you only 6 hours when you guys needed like a full day's worth of work, and you guys had to work around that. You guys did manage to get the shots you needed in that short span of time, but you know, it was quite obvious that apart from the time management, that was an issue there, but the overall experience working on the water was just the biggest hurdle you guys had to overcome.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned before in the previous conversation we had that you had to do a whole day of a pickup shop.
Yeah.
Because you miscalculated about how the shark was going to be used in the scene, and Jeff had to go back. So it's a lot of hurdles you guys had to overcome that for you yourself, I imagine you weren't experienced with here. And then once you've learned it, okay, we got to do this and get this corrected.
Yeah, sure.
But for the way, after hearing you guys share their stories here with me and then seeing the film, I think the film turned out really well. I enjoyed the movie. Yeah. In fact, I was actually really happy to see that because the movie's available on YouTube for anyone who doesn't know, but it's actually getting quite a lot of views on YouTube. I think it's going over 500,000 view at this point. So I was like, well, that's great.
Yeah.
And the reaction from what
I
So the reaction to the movie, I think from what I remember reading the comments, was actually pretty good. I think most people were like, this is actually a lot better than I thought.
Yeah.
Exactly what I thought too.
Yeah.
So now with the film is out available on YouTube and it's going to be coming out on DVD in April. I'm not sure how you feel about the film now because I don't think I ever heard anything about your commentary on the film, but I was curious to see how you felt about shooting it and then putting it together and then now having it released in that capacity. What's your overall thoughts on the film now?
It was so again, you know, being a genre film, we said, what is it really about? And so it's a movie about alcoholism, you know, and it's like, what? You know, but the shark is a metaphor for Tom Helm's character deciding whether he's going to let alcoholism kill him or if he's going to kill it. And our distributor, I'm not sure he watches all the movies, but he watched this one. And he was like, you are a good writer, because he, I think, could appreciate the fact that we're making a dumb shark movie and it is extremely watchable. And there's probably about 7 minutes of shark in the movie. And some of it looks a lot better than other parts, you know. But Jeff did a tremendous job And I know he did 3 months of footage, and he showed it to us, and Tiffany was not pleased with it. She wanted to go in a different direction. And Jeff was so awesome because he can pivot, and we just got some plates and put the shark different. The shark looks good, you know.
Yeah.
And Jeff, kudos to Jeff. He's my hero on that because he saved it. And Tom Hallam gives one of his best performances. I know we've said that a million times, but he really pulled some personal stuff out of his life and put it into the film. A lot of the divorce talk is straight out of my mouth, you know, and feelings that I've had about, you know, it does feel sometimes like your wife is using your child as a monetary weapon versus a human being when you're going through a divorce. And, you know, the only people that win in this situation are the lawyers, not us or our child, you know? And so it's a heavy movie. There's a lot of stuff in there, you know, the relationship for father and son, that must be my shtick, because everything I do seems to come down to a son and a father, you know? And we were so happy with the way that movie turned out. We were so on the fence because the pickup day was because we wanted 12 hours on the water and only got 6. And we were like, okay, let's just get the shots we need if we have more time. But then we're like, oh, we need drone footage, so we don't have time for anything else. But the drone footage, again, Jeff did that. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's getting really positive reviews, which is different for us right out of the gate. People that watch it in Africa and things like that, they're like, this is the best shark movie since Jaws, you know? Really? And wow. Yeah, there were people on there like, this is much more enjoyable than, you know, Sharknado and all this and that. And there is science behind it. There can be sharks in lakes. You know, we did our research. I tell people that all the time, you know, and, you know, Tiffany, I wanted to give her a bigger role in this film. She was great. She's been forever. She was a huge commercial actress for, you know, 20 plus years. Yeah. And she gets self-conscious about being in movies. I think sometimes I'm like, you just need to be in it a certain way. So when she was doing her role as the coroner, she couldn't do it. There was something holding her back. And I said, let's just have you eating in every scene that you're in. And she's like, what? And I'm like, just trust me, give her some pork rinds, give her an apple. And so her thing in the movie, she's always stuffing her face, and it worked so well. Yeah, you know, it was like memorable, like the coroner that won't stop eating, you know, and which is similar. I pulled that from Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. He's always eating nachos or something, you know, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're gonna do with her. So I think that movie is one of my favorites that we've done because it was fun to shoot. It really was. Okay. Difficult on the water, but the rest of it was very fun. It was just a good time. You know, it was hot and we got to hang out in the lake. I will say I'm terrified to go in lakes now because there were moments where we were in the deepest part of Lake Ray Roberts. So it's like 60 plus feet. You can't see your hand in the water. Mm-hmm. And Jeff is on a floaty with his red camera, and I'm on a floaty, and Tom Zimbrod has our rig, and you're looking around and you're like, this is freaky as hell. And the current came out one day, and we would literally just talk for a minute and turn around. The boat is 30 feet away. And we're like, this is scary as hell. So like Tiff would have to pull the boat around. I'm like, quickly, you know, we're getting anxious out here by ourselves. And luckily her and I, you know, we've owned boats, so we knew how to maneuver in and out of the coves and stuff. But it was tricky. You know, some of the actors had never been on a boat, and I'm like, there is no brake, you know, so when you want to slow down, you have to put it in, you know, because they're like, where's the brake, you know? And then Billy, I think, stole the show with his Nolan character. Everybody in the comments is like, dude, that Nolan guy is, you know, on another level. So we like Bull Shark. That was a fun one. And I think we'd like to do a couple more shark movies, actually. So
really, okay,
that. Yeah, we've kind of had this idea about a year after Bull Shark for Bull Shark 2, and you know, Tom is, you know, either has his stuff together or doesn't. I don't know what the consensus is, but I started reading when I was doing shark research that how some sharks and other strange animals, lions, things that would kill you or me, you know, can sometimes, if they have children around humans, develop a bond with that human. I forget what it's called.
Oh,
where
okay.
they feel like that human is part of their family. That's why if you see like Tiger King,
Yeah.
you know, these tigers are so. My idea is, what if Tom somehow did that with the mother bull shark, and she feels connected to him, and he feels connected to her, so he comes back and has to kill this one, you know, and you know, you can bring Nolan back. We have so many characters we can bring back. We can bring the mayor back, the coroner, all these people, and finish that story. So it's an idea. If we didn't like the way this turned out, I would never do another shark movie. But I did have fun with it. So
It's funny because you mentioned you would do a short film, which, you know, working on water, because I've never worked on water to that extent, but you know, I understand it's very difficult, but you would do that, but you won't do a Western because I
no,
think
I'm
that.
done with those. The westerns are so hard, man.
But let's jump back in the water, guys. Bring the cameras. You know,
Yeah,
I think
we'll
that's
do it.
funny though.
It's
But
fun. We'll stay at a lake house. It's a good time, you know.
well, okay. Well, so at least at this point right now, with all the films you've done so far in the last, you know, 2-3 years at this point with B22, you know, for me personally, you know, when you had reached out, and, you know, I've shared before in the past that you've reached out in the comment section, and we were conversed from there. We kind of hit it off.
Yeah,
You know, this is that's the beautiful thing about social media. You know, everyone has their thing about social media, and I get it. But if it wasn't for you reaching out, you know, I probably would have never heard of any of your films at all. You know, and coming across the
yeah,
movies, I think that I've come to appreciate a lot more, and going back to watch films that I, you know, had perceptions of in one way, and then go back and watch again, have a different perception as I continue on watching it over and over again. So for me personally, you know, I believe, as I said before in the past, that you are a very good director, a very good writer. I do believe, and I said it before in the message I sent to you, that you are your absolute strongest when you're dealing with more personal sides of the character's journey. And again, I told you before in the past that if you remove the shark element out of, you know, bull shark, and just focus on the alcoholism that Tom Hallam's character is going through, that's going to be a completely different story. But it's still compelling enough for you to be invested with what's going on,
yeah,
because
yeah.
Tom is fantastic, the story was really good, and so on and so forth. So, you know, I'm curious to see how things are going forward with you now, because you're still stepping into the genre of thrillers and westerns. You know, you're shooting Bountyman just recently here. And then you mentioned before in the beginning of this conversation that you are looking to direct another film very similar to 90 Feet from Home, make it a much more grounded story. And honestly, as much as I do enjoy your films, I actually would like to see you go back to that, because, you know, I always felt like that's where you had the most connection with, if not with most audience people who watch the film. But I also imagine with everyone else that has also worked in the story on those films too, because there's certain
Yeah.
elements about those productions that they take away from a lot. And you mentioned before, Rodeo Thief, there's a lot of personal investment with that movie, and your wife loves the making the film, and obviously the film itself. 90 Feet from Home, it has a lot of meaning for you as well. And then when you look at a movie, let's say for example like Bull Shark, which has a lot of personal elements to it, but the shark is just the added, you know, it's just a backdrop. It's just there to kind of help fit in for the genre, if you will. But I think you have a really good eye when it comes to telling stories. So, you know, I can go on for hours about that. But, you know, considering how you have been, how you started and where you are with yourself now, directing, writing wise, and then going through the number of productions you've gone through, you know, with the time constraints and the budgeting and whatnot, I
Hmm.
still feel like you have a very good sense, a strong sense of like telling really good stories. You know, of course, everything's going to be up in the air as far as how people perceive it. But for yourself now, going through all the productions you've gone through and the ones you're working on right now, how do you feel personally for yourself about how you evolve, not only as a writer and as a director, but as a person going through those experiences up to this point?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Right.
You know, you go through a lot of life, you know, while you're doing this freaking crazy business, you
Yeah.
know, and it is a business, and I think that's where Tiffany has changed my view. We are not a bunch of friends renting a camera on a Friday and returning it on Monday and making a short film. This is a machine at this point, and we have more ambition and bigger plans for the future than we ever dreamed we would have. You know, and our goal is to be um, you know, the most recognized, appreciated film company here, you know, and I know we do have some competition, you know, and they run their businesses different than ours, and that's fine. And the film industry in North Texas is very strange because there's just a lot of unhealthy competition. I'll put it that way, between groups. And there are people that, whatever camp they're in, no matter what the other camp does, they could love the movie. They're just programmed by somebody or something to just be hateful about it, you know. And it doesn't really serve any purpose because it's not going to get you hired on our set. It's probably not going to get you hired on anybody else's set because we all talk and we all know who never to hire in North Texas. And if anybody watches this, they know who they are because they're constantly emailing B22 wanting to act, wanting to work. We don't even open the email because we just don't want that cancer on set, you know. And you know, the future for us is going to be massive. And Tiffany and I have a plan to take this company into another orbit where we can start developing projects for you. You know, if you were to call and say, I have this movie idea, I'm passionate about it, I want to write it, I want to direct it, we will finance your movie and we will get your movie made and on the shelves and out there. And that is the biggest thing, is people don't understand, you know, I've gone through 2 divorces and you know, starting over twice while I've been telling stories. That is the kind of motivation you need to succeed. You cannot be a screenwriter without living life. I'm working on a project with a young person, and reading his script, I'm like, you haven't lived long enough to know what you're writing about. So let me help you because I've been in this situation, or I know Tom Zembrot's been in. Let me talk to him and ask him, how did this happen? And let's put it in your script, you know? And so we have a group of young people we're mentoring, and we're going to make their passion come to life, you know? And we've got new friends and new, you know, financiers that we're developing projects for bigger budgets and bigger ideas. And so I think the last 3 years it's been a hard road to where we are now. But if I had to tell you, like, starting on the very next project we have in March, things are going to be completely different. And one of the examples of that is the script that we were talking about. It's nothing like 90 Feet from Home. I'll give you a little bit. It's a ghost movie. Okay.
Oh, the one with the Sixth Sense type of ending you mentioned before?
Yes. It has, a gentleman wrote it in Ohio, just a random person, and sent me an email. You know how many emails I get? Here's a movie. I don't read any of the scripts. You know, we just don't take unsolicited material because it can open you up to legal issues. And so this one I did start reading. I read the first scene and I was like, and then I read the next scene. And I was like, wow. And then I kept reading it, and then I didn't stop reading it. And I messaged him. I said, dude, you have an incredible story here. Like, the hair was standing up. And I said, I want to buy this from you. And he was like, what? And I said, I'm going to buy it from you. I'm going to pay you right now. I'm going to buy your script. We're going to make it into a movie. And he's like, you know how many times I've been told that? And I said, well, here is a legal contract that says I'm buying this and we're making it. And that is the script that we're deciding what to do with. I did rewrite it.
Hi, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, so Tiff and I are deciding right now how to make it come to life. Do we want to put some recognizable faces in it? And I think it is the most original script I've read maybe ever. There's never been a movie with an ending like this that I think will leave people's jaws just like, seriously? It is unbelievable. There is one movie it reminds me of. I don't know if you've seen it. I can't remember the name of it. The Invitation, I think, where they go to a party out in the hills in LA.
Oh, yeah. I've never seen it, but I know that movie.
He walks out and he sees all these red lanterns in the hills, meaning everybody's killing people they don't like. It's that type of ending. It's so uncomfortable. But it's a ghost movie about a ghost and a neighborhood where ghosts live. And deeper down, it is about a woman's painful history. And man, it's going to blow you away, dude. I mean, I don't talk about my stuff like that. It is going to blow you, because I've known you for a while now. You're going to watch it and be like, holy shit, like this is the one, and so I've changed as an adult. Like I said, I'm 40 now. I started this when I was 30, and I'm getting older, midlife. You're starting to see things, extra wrinkles, a little more dirt under the nails. You're just, I mean, I'm not as old as Tiffany, but it's but
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have as many wrinkles as her, but no, I think we're both.
I'm sure she loves it, walking in and having this conversation. Like, yeah, I'm not as old as she is.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, babes?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hey. No, but yeah, I'm in trouble. But we have a plan. I think you just start to. I don't know how old you are, Rob, but
I'll be 37 this year.
Yeah, you something happened when I hit 40, where I was just like, man, none of this stuff matters. All this anger you're holding on to, all these negative reviews, it doesn't matter, man. It really doesn't. At the end of the day, we're doing something that we really enjoy, which I think that's the people that are angry. I think that's why they're angry, because they're seeing you do something that they either are incapable of doing or can't do for whatever reason. It could be a positive reason, but so we've just, we've learned to look at the movies we've made that we don't enjoy and laugh at them. And then the ones that we do enjoy, cry with them. It's okay. You can let it out. But so yeah, I know that's a long answer to what you asked, but it's just, we have a lot in the pipeline. We have so much in the pipeline that we're just kind of like, how are we going to do this? But we'll do it, and we have a bunch of sci-fi coming out, which is interesting. We have a virtual reality movie, which is a Ready Player One type, where we go in and out of virtual reality. It's super cool.
Interesting.
That's next. It's called Andromeda.
Oh, I thought that was supposed to be like a space movie. Is that what that is?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's about this device that this guy can wear to take him to another planet, and kind of the mishaps of different alien life. And so it's half
going to be playing out. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's still being cast, but that's our next project. And then, Misanthrope was a project we shot during COVID with Dustin Rhodes, Badass Billy Gunn, and his son Austin Gunn, and we finally got the green light to finish that. So that's going to become a feature film.
Oh, so was that supposed to be a TV series?
It was, and it just wasn't going to work.
Okay.
And it was called Misanthrope, which people were like, we don't know what that means. So I was like, okay, so we changed it to Missing Persons. And so that one I'm going to say you're going to get some credit on, okay? Because you told me a while back, you said you need to, I feel like you get to that spot where it can go really dark, and it just doesn't. Well, I wrote the end of that movie with you in mind.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you right now, it goes batshit crazy off the rails. Okay.
Interesting.
And I've already, Tom Hallam stars in that because he has to. And I was like, you need to do blah, 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 blah. And he was like, what? And I was like, yep, I'm like, Rob is going to watch it. Be like, he finally went there. And I got Tiffany's blessing, because she was like, yes, more, make him, he's going to do this. Oh my gosh, the audience is going to not want to watch. You're going to have to look away. And that's what Rob wants.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? I appreciate you saying that, because I had no idea that I had that influence over you. Like,
yeah, man.
Wow, interesting.
It was you that said it, and then when I brought it up to Tiffany, she was like, he's right. Because she's always trying to push the envelope, and I'm always like, and she's like, just so this time it comes completely out of left field. And even when I was writing it, I'm like, okay, all right, Rob, how about this? How about this? So good luck with that one.
Wow. You just made my day. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think you will enjoy it. It's a very dark. And then the thing is, because it's me, I'm going to make the movie end on that and make you sit with it, and be like, oh God, it's just so dark and brutal.
Wow, I'm invested already.
So we'll see.
Well, I'm already invested with all your projects anyways, but especially with this one here now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you mentioned something in the previous conversation that I hope you can kind of close off here with now, which is that, when I talked to you for the first time last year, we talked about how you have this relationship with making movies, and you said you hate it and that, or you want to quit every day, but you like you're in for the results rather than the actual rewards of the film.
Yeah.
Has that changed for you now, or is that still the same?
No, it's even more. It burns even more. You have to. It's a lyric to a song that I'll never remember, but you have to want the work more than the reward. And I saw a TED talk one time, and Warren Buffett was talking about making your first $100,000 is hard, and then after that it becomes easy. And it's because you've reached that plateau of making 100 grand and saving it, and now you just want the work, and you're not worried about getting to that plateau. It might have been the first million is probably what he said. But so to me, it's like, we're already filmmakers. We don't have to prove ourselves. We don't have to worry about making money at it. This is just, what else can we do? What else can we do? What do we want to do? Damon John had said, when he goes to bed at night, his bank account is X because of FUBU. And when he wakes up in the morning, he can sleep well knowing that all night people were buying that brand. And it's no longer a concern for us of, are we going to be able to make another movie? We had that. We had nights where Tiff and I'd look at each other and be like, oh, that's it. We're done. Nobody's asking us to make another movie. We don't have any more money to make another movie. And now we're at the point where it's like, we can call our distributors and our financiers and be like, this is what we want to do next. And they're like, we believe in you guys. We've got a great track record. Let's do it. And we hear all the time from actors we've never worked with, man, you guys have a great reputation in this area, and people want to work on your sets because you treat everybody fair, you pay them fair, you feed them well. And so I think we've gotten to the point, right? Yeah, Tiff eats the pork rinds. But we've gotten to the point now where it's just, my burning is to do the next thing. It's not, I'm not waiting for the studio project to pay me the DGA rate. If that happens, great, and it probably will. But until then, we're just gonna keep doing it and keep hopefully shocking people.
Well, I think that's a good way to end on this here, because I think you have it's nowadays when I'm doing this more often here, I've been able to develop a really wonderful relationship with a lot of people that I've come across in the industry. And you're, for me, in my opinion, one of the very many people that I've come across that have been able to maintain that relationship since our first conversation. So if anything, I'm always very grateful that you've been able to maintain that with me. And I don't take that for granted. As you already know, I am a genuine fan of your work here. So, but, again, I always want to say thank you for giving me the time to speak with you, for going over 2 hours at this point, which is a lot for me to work with, but it's a lot for me to really delve into, because I love revisiting our conversations, because believe it or not, I watch our episodes that we've done here.
I do too.
More than once.
They're enjoyable.
Yeah. So, but I appreciate that. So anyways, so on that note,